Very warm welcome to this bite-sized session of our Enabling All network. And today we are going to be talking about hybrid church. What do we mean? What is the purpose of trying to run meetings and church services and events where people can join us from home? What are the different methods of approaching that? How much of a tech wizard do you have to be? And where can you find out more and begin learning about that? So I am Zoe Heming, and I am, for one more month only, the Enabling All advisor for the Lichfield Diocese, which broadly speaking means that I've been involved for a number of years now in working with other disabled and neurodivergent people in the churches and communities of the Lichfield Diocese. So for this time together, I wanted to also mention Hilary Griffin, who, well, you're very welcome to unmute and introduce yourself if you are happy to do that.
Hello, I'm Hilary, by no means a tech expert, but I do support the hybrid services we have each week at St Andrews, where I worship. And also I'm the dementia coordinator, so have had some dealings with helping people get onto Zoom, not so much with hybrid services, but certainly get onto Zoom and become familiar with it. So that's me.
Thank you. Welcome, Jane. So I asked Hilary to be here for this final session where I'll be with you and inputting, because St Andrews, when lockdown happened, had to do the same as everybody else and figure out how we were going to try and stay together. And Hilary is, well, you may or may not know, is considered the Oracle of St Andrews, and connects and sends information to the many people who are part of our church family, and was involved from the start in thinking through how we gather online, but also how we empower people who have gone on to stay online to be able to stay with us. So what I'm going to just briefly cover is what we mean by hybrid, and then spend a little bit of time thinking through why it's important and why it's worth giving a go. So what I won't be doing in this session is giving you all the tech expertise, because each capacity here is going to be different. I am not the person who runs the tech, but also there is some really good information available. So we will be, we've prepared a document to send you where you can find out all that you need to know to start having a play if this isn't something you're already doing. But so first of all, what do we mean by the word hybrid, and what is it that we're going to share? So many churches, as we know, were decided to switch to meeting, either through creating YouTube services, which was very time intensive, and some people did really amazingly. Others switched to broadcasting live on Facebook, and from there we know that people can put things in comments, or that they can do the we like that button, and you get the hearts rising up and the video, and there is an interactive element to that. And isn't it extraordinary that none of us knew what the word Zoom was, other than what you might do with the toy racing car, or if you're into the Grand Prix maybe. And so we've all been learning an awful lot. So nobody was an expert before, but what we realized was that it was not fine for us to not meet as Christians worshipping together. And wasn't it extraordinary what suddenly became possible? So that's kind of a start point to encourage us all to be thinking, boldly about what's worth giving things a go. And if it's not something you already do, in terms of enabling people from home to not just receive information broadcast from church, but actually be able to take part. And that is what we mean by hybrid. then I hope by the end of this session you'll feel a bit more empowered to give it a go, and then pick up with others in your church congregation and those involved in planning and leading worship to consider how you might enable people who aren't able to be in the building, but are very much still church. It really matters. So it's quite possible that I am here potentially preaching to the choir, because we know that watching church on a screen is not the same as being among church. And it has felt like a huge shift happened when we had no choice but to meet only digitally or not at all. And then there was the shift to moving back, which is what, in my experience, the majority of people did. So I'm really heartened to see that a number of you here, and presumably that's why you're here, because you understand that what was suddenly possible for people who it was a new experience to be not be able to get into the building and participate in person, were able to be there. But actually, there's always been a cohort of people who are part of your church community, or who would consider themselves to be, or who used to be, who have not been able to come to the building for a long time already. What we learned really quickly as part of our work with other colleagues working among and with disabled Christians around the country is that actually disabled people were the experts in how to do online church, because many people, that's the only church that they've been having, and that is for them not second best, that it is the most enabling format of gathering for many, many people. And there's something of a culture shift where you've got a bit of a divide on that. So I wanted us just to make sure that we were clear about why it's important. Those of you that are doing that, I wonder if you've got anything to add, or perhaps an experience to share from your own people, with or with their consent, or speak from your experience about the impacts of either stopping doing it or giving it a go because it matters. Give us a wave if you've got something that would be.
Hi there. Yeah, it's I love what you just said, that disabled people were experts of online church. I think that's brilliant, and what a great resource for us. But also, yeah, we did during lockdown services on Zoom, but it was live like this. So we would be talking and say hello to everybody at the start, have blessings and interactive, and oh, you're on mute, and oh, who can read this? And it was really lovely. And we've kept that going once a month. And we've found that especially people who actually people and their partners, sometimes one part of the couple could make it to church, but the other part of the couple couldn't. So to have this once a month thing where both parties could join and be recognized and spoken to has been really good. And I'm intrigued actually to think about how we can do that in a hybrid way, so that when we're live, how do we then not leave out those people who might want to join? So I'll be really intrigued to hear other people's experiences and learn.
Perfect. Well, that's why we are here. Well, and you've illustrated. Hilary, did you want? It might be helpful to hear from you about St Andrews, which is where I'm for a little bit longer the vicar.
Yeah, it's almost a dim and distant memory now of the grey boxes that used to float across the screen when we were doing Zoom at first during lockdown. We always suddenly were plagued by floating grey boxes, and took us all quite a while to adjust to the technology, and also to not to worry too much if things did go a bit wrong, because we're all in it together. I think that was the main thing. Now, when we have our hybrid services, we always make a point of introducing the people who are joining us by Zoom, and read out their names if we have permission at the beginning of the service, so they feel very much included and named. Because a couple of comments from our congregation said, "Well, who are these people on Zoom?" As if it was some sort of foreign cohort that had descended on us, and it didn't matter at all who they were, really. But I think it was nice for them to realise they were part of our church family. A lot of them existing members who, unfortunately, through poor health or other reasons, could no longer attend in person. So that was really important, and that was a two-way process for the people in church to recognise and welcome the people who are attending on Zoom, and the people on Zoom to feel very included. And Zoe works hard at communion to make sure that people at home are receiving whatever they have in front of them as well, and that's very inclusive. And our Zoomers do read the lessons via Zoom, and also intercessions. So that's been great. It's all a bit dependent on their Wi-Fi and our Wi-Fi on that day. So we do tend to have backup of either get them to email in the prayers, or we've got somebody on standby with a printed copy of the reading just in case. But I think the big thing is not to worry too much if it all goes a bit pear-shaped. It's trial and error, but we're all in it together, and we're all working towards the same goal. And we got past the grey boxes, and they're now a thing of the past.
Thank you, Hilary. Yeah, it's really, really important to say, because I think people felt out of their depth and scared, and the comfort of being back in the building made people sort of, oh, it's all right, we're all back now. And I don't know about, well, I do know that there are lots and lots of churches like St Andrews, which at the time didn't have, running water, let alone Wi-Fi. And I had a very sleepless night as a vicar who's been part of the disabled Christian community for a really long time, and just know how valuable it is to be able to be together. And I basically made a decision that we would not restart in the building unless we brought everybody with us. And that meant we had to find a solution, just like we had to find a solution and did. As we know, necessity is the mother of invention. And we were able to think of how to do that. So we got a mobile router, which doesn't cost very much money. And we get it out of the locked cupboard and put it in a window where it gets the most signal. And it isn't foolproof, and that's okay, because we're not trying to be filmmakers, and we're not trying to do professional conferences, although actually the technology has improved so much. But it does matter that, as Hilary said, that people feel enabled to be there at all, and not the poor relations. So we're going to just get into now a little bit of the what are the kind of minimum basics to start thinking through. And then we'll have a little bit of time to be hearing from others in the space with particular expertise before we have a time of conversation with one another, and what we'll do to follow up from this. So first of all, the how. Well, there's lots of ways of doing this, potentially. And we were all trying to decide which whether we went Teams or Zoom or YouTube or Facebook or all the different platforms. But this session will be about how we use Zoom predominantly. And we'll be signposting you and sending you information which is available from the Church of England. There's all sorts of webinars and really, really helpful links, which I'll pop into the chat shortly, which can send you to more detailed information about how you can link your Zoom broadcast to be happening live stream also on your Facebook page. And that is, if there's one social media that people feel able to connect to, Facebook can feel like a safe option for people, and aren't expecting to have the sort of face to camera experience, which puts a lot of people off. But without going into the detail of that, what are the basics that a church wanting to do this worship in a hybrid way needs to have. So the Wi-Fi that works enough is a minimum, and a Zoom account. Now, it's worth noting that, as we all know probably, that Zoom updates itself with new features all the time. And one of the frustrating things that we find about that is that just as we have worked out what accessibility settings we need, then Zoom moves its buttons around and changes its settings. So we have to do that again every single time. So I have a blind colleague who, in the most recent, 3 updates, can no longer find the buttons that mean that he can hear and have screen reader as to who's in the meeting. So he's being disabled by Zoom itself quite frequently. So it's worth always that having in place the core team of 2 or 3 people who don't have to be experts, but who are willing to have a play and to familiarize themselves with what the updates on Zoom look like. You also need to have the Zoom paid account. Now, all of us got the free one to start with, which gives you 45 minutes, I think, at the moment, but it doesn't offer you the best sound settings. And we'll be saying a few more words about sound settings, because that's where things most frequently go wrong for us and where it can be complicated, or where our anxieties might lie for people being able to participate and join in with readings and prayers and conversations from home. So we will be looking at that. So your people are the thing that you need, in addition to a Zoom account that's paid for, and good enough Wi-Fi, or the best kind of Wi-Fi that you can get in what's realistic with your church budget, where it is, and what the signal's like in your area. But a mobile router for a church like ours was good enough. You may be in a super high fiber optic, or you may be really connected, or not at all. It's worth also saying that not everybody needs to have a computer or even a smartphone. From the beginning, Zoom was always able to be accessed through a telephone line. And that's something that I think has been often forgotten or overlooked. And that actually is a feature that has persisted. And we have had consistent attendance and participation via telephone line. So where people are anxious, one of the things that's really important to do as a church is to be communicating with your people about how they can access. So once you know who's willing to be looking at this and experimenting and becoming familiar with Zoom, then you also need to make sure that there are people within that team who are able to communicate to the people who you'd like to be able to join in. Most of us have a newsletter of some kind, but sometimes that isn't going to be enough, because if it's sent via email, that is obviously only going to work for people who are using the internet. But for people with a landline, and we do still have those, or did until very recently, that won't reach them. So taking a bit of time to think, who's missing, and asking others, do you know who's missing? Or is there anybody in your network that would like to join in? And that's a really helpful thing. And as Sarah said, actually, you end up getting more people joining in from home. Evangelism's never been easier, because there are people in the house who are like, oh yeah, I'll stay, and may just be sitting on a different chair in the room, and are then hearing and are able to participate in their way, even just via a telephone, if that's the preferred method. Anything to add or clarify at that point before we get into a little bit more detail about what those people do? Yes, Hilary.
I would just say that we found it helpful to put that information about the phone line and the meeting links every single week. They are, and I know those that aren't on our email have the hand-delivered newsletter, but things change, and somebody who might have been coming to church very regularly suddenly needs to use Zoom, and they do need that information to be there readily available. And I've also been caught out approaching somebody who I thought, because of age, may not be able to access our services, and offered to go and help. But I was briskly told they're perfectly capable of accessing Wi-Fi, thank you very much, and joining the Zoom, but the time wasn't right for them in the morning. So don't be judgmental. It's the other thing.
That is really helpful, because as you say, things change. So having a pattern of services and setting up your meetings in a way that doesn't change every single time is really important. And then whatever method you're communicating with people, so whoever's on your readings rota or how that information gets shared, do be always thinking, okay, what about people who don't get email? Who are definitely still part of this church family, and it isn't as complicated as we thought. Pushing a reading through somebody's door and giving them the phone line to call in, and they can hear the service all the way through, and then be guided through which button to press on their phone in order to be able to be heard, and that is pretty game changing for quite a lot of people who were in our experience, foundational core members of church who've never been back into the building, but who never miss Sunday services. And there's a significant number of people of our congregation. So I would say we have an additional third who are always there. And some of them invite their families from all over the world, that they can actually worship then with their families or friends from all over the place. And anecdotally, the kinds of difference that makes is if someone's recovering in hospital, for example, and we've had this, they can just dial in from where they are. So you can reassure people that as their circumstances change, they can stay with us this way, and not to think of it as second best. But unless we make the effort to try and value the gifts that they're still going to bring, they're going to feel like they are second best. They're just going to watch church from now on. So Hillary's already mentioned it's worth naming the people who have dialed in or joined via Zoom. So just to focus for a few minutes on how the minimum setup works for us, to consider how you do that. So you need a Zoom host and a co-host. What does the Zoom host do and what does the co-host do? We'll be sending out a little bit more detail after this session, but the co-host, the host sets up the meeting settings. They're the people who are able to play with Zoom. Maybe you guys in the room, and you may already be comfortable and familiar. You don't appear on screen unless you wish to. You're the kind of back office making it happen. The co-host's role is a really important one, and that's partly around security, because we know that not everybody has had good intentions towards showing up to meetings. Now, that's a bit complicated because anybody can walk into a church building. So we had lots of conversations about this, and I wonder, it'd be good to hear if you guys have got any experience of concerns about security. One of the ways we try to address that is to make sure that we have a co-host, and their job is to let people in, and to do that by knowing who they are or inviting them to tell you who they are before you let them in. Of course, the settings which the host has set up, and you don't have to do that you do it once and make sure it's still working every now and again, are so that everybody is muted. Nobody can speak without the permission of the host or the co-host. So there is less risk already inherently in that. So people can be arriving at any point, and your co-host's job for us, that is writing down who has turned up on Zoom this morning. And then part of the procession is to process past the co-host, who gives us a piece of paper with the names of those joining us online. And then my first job, when I'm welcoming people from the front into the building, I also name the people who are joining us from at home. And we have feedback that that's really important because they feel valued. Yeah, it's a really easy thing to do, and it's a job that the co-hosts can do really easily. So we have people who are less technically confident, who are comfortable to sit on the laptop, which we bring in and set up as the co-host's laptop. But their job is to help with the muting, the unmuting, and the making sure we know who's there. Another function is that people are able to put comments or questions into their chat if they're struggling. So work out how you want chat to be used. It isn't going to be popping up on your big screen if you're using a big screen, but that people can ask questions, or if they're struggling with anything, they can that will be picked up by the co-host and then can be either directly addressed or fed back after the service if it's something that isn't urgent. Anything it would be helpful to clarify or add at this stage before we look at a little bit more detail if we would like to? Okay, well, so if we sort of sketched out the terrain of why this is a good thing to do. Some of you, well, I think all of you have got experience of broadcast church in one way or another. Are there particular things that you have tried, or that there are questions which you have that would make you feel more confident about stepping into this a little bit nearer in order to equip people to join from home? Because certainly with the people in the room, there are people who are likely to help. Sarah.
Just thinking practically, I don't know if you'll be sending this afterwards, but we've never videoed a service before, I don't think, as far as I can recall. So the online services were just people like us now joining from our homes, offices, wherever we were. And I just wonder what technology you actually need to record a service.
Well, so you do need something which is recording video, which, as you said, the laptops that we're all in front of right now, if we all are, it might even be smartphones, they've all got cameras. So something, you need a camera. Hilary, would you like to share how our use of camera has evolved over time?
If I can remember that far back, yeah. Yeah, now we've got a super duper camera that's mounted on a tripod at the back of church, zoomed into the nave and where the main service takes place. We have experimented in the past with moving the camera around the church, looking at the music group, looking at the congregation. Inherent with that was the implied consent that people attending church knew that there may be part of them on camera at some point. We don't record all our services. And obviously, if we record services, the individuals joining by Zoom can give or hold back consent for that to be part. So yeah, we started off small with sort of small camera on a tripod, moving it round. We've tried different positions in church, and where we are now seems to suit. Certainly, the Zoomers feel much more included. They feel that the view they've got of everybody who's sort of leading the service and the music group, the movers and shakers, if you like. We think we've got it right. But it took quite a while to sort out, because we show a PowerPoint service as well on slides, so that's on the big screen. That's also seen by the Zoomers as well, so they follow the service on the slides, and the sound is picked up obviously from church. And we did have problems with sound. We still do have problems with sound from time to time. The settings, as Zoe said, do change quite a lot, and we have to tweak things quite a lot, but generally our Zoomers are not backwards in coming forwards with their comments if things aren't right.
Yeah, feedback is really important. Graham.
Yeah, just about the sound. There's a setting called live performance.
Hooray, that's the button that we were going to raise. Say
all right,
more.
sorry,
No,
jumping.
please do say more. It's really important.
It is worth playing around with it because it does help, especially if you've got multiple instruments or multiple voices. It stops Zoom from trying to crunch the sound and sort of neutralize it a bit. So we use that a lot. And I have to confess, we use 4 different cameras
Oh,
that are just
wow.
old mobile phones that we've borrowed from people, or largely from myself, if I'm being honest, that we've just got spread up around the building, which means that if we need to cut away from one camera to another one for any reason, so if someone walks into shot and collapses or something like that, there's somewhere else we can go to continue with things. So we've got a camera on the altar so people can see the Eucharist close up. We've got a camera at the pew so people can see the procession in. We've got a camera at the dais so people can see us at a wider angle of the front of church. And it does help, but
your hosts, how tech savvy are they? So it sounds like you've got somebody at the back who is
I've got
deciding
someone
which
who's a
one.
retired nurse who barely knew how to use a computer before she started doing it.
Interesting.
So, it just needs someone to sit down and mentor them for a couple of services. And the advantage of Zoom is it's fairly simple, so they can pick it up.
Yeah,
So
the sound is a big
that's
deal.
sorry.
No, carry on, Sarah.
Sorry. So just would you have somebody, you don't just place the phone where it is, you have somebody holding the phone or sitting next to where the phone is, or
I bought cheap selfie sticky type tripods on
yes.
Amazon for 10 quid each or something like that.
Yeah.
Some setup. And there's one I put a television up in our pool. Our pulpit's unusable because of the sightlines in the church, so it's now a television stand effectively. And we've got a flat screen TV that someone was getting rid of again. None of this cost me anything. It was all borrowed tech basically. But I've set up a TV on the pulpit, which means those in the pews can see. And there's a laptop plugged into that. So
Yes.
it's telephone cameras plus laptop for that. But it means that they can see everyone at home. Because I think, Zoe, you're right, it's the cross-party nature of it that's what helps. It's people in church being able to see those at home, and people at home being able to see into church and hear in and out as well. It really makes it work.
Thank you. So it can seem like everybody has got tech expertise on this. So just hearing about the setup that you have just described, my immediate thought was, oh gosh, our folk wouldn't cope with this, or people might think it's intrusive, or because we were really concerned about how intrusive technology can feel. And sometimes I think we have worried about that because in our experience, people want the particular people who've always been there to still be there. So personalizing it is really important. So it's not nameless, faceless people who are joining us online. And discrete bits of tech is really, like Graham said, the selfie stick or our tripod, which is right at the back of the church, is not intrusive at all.
And every church has multiple areas that can be kept as blackout spots for anyone who doesn't want to be seen on a live screen. So we've got the transepts that people can sit in, and just I think as long as you've got something up that says if you sit here you might be in camera, most people in my experience have been happy with that. And it doesn't take long to quickly remove something from the Facebook page if there is someone who says, I just realised you've live streamed that and I'd like not to be in it, please.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. That is one element that if you connect, so we don't routinely record for various reasons. So ours is just live broadcast predominant, live Zoom predominantly. But obviously, if you're linking it and broadcasting it on Facebook, then it is not just broadcast, it is then on your Facebook page as a recording. So I think it is worth giving a bit of thought and attention to how you do that. So from our point of view, we have a sort of speaker view, one camera pointing at the front, and then people's backs are what I've seen, but it is very, very zoomed in, so that predominantly it is the Eucharist, the speakers. But that element of interactivity can be done in that really sort of basic way, and confidence is the biggest barrier to this. So trying it out in an empty church with a laptop and a couple of phones, and somebody joining on their phone on the landline and seeing how it sounds in church, and it's much more possible than you might think. The obstacles to getting started are not as great as you might think. So what I'm going to do now is just we'll end this recording, and then we'll have a little bit more of a Q&A with one another. But going forwards, we have got a whole host of links of information that you can find out far more. What to do around sound settings, which are, as Graham has already indicated, there's a really important button to press if you don't want to sound like you're all underwater, for those joining from home. And there are some really brilliant webinars and really clear information about how it stands on broadcasting other people's music and copyright and those kinds of things, all on the Church of England website, because everybody has been figuring this out. So there's a wealth of guidance around how to do it in your particular place. But even in this room, I think we realise that people, our church, if they are able to, bring their gifts as well as receive. And that's always worth trying. Even any effort on that is really, really worth it, for us to be that body that really does value those who we would maybe have considered as weaker members, because they may in fact be the experts who've been doing it this way for years.